Hi there. Welcome to the Hearth of America. We're going to tell some stories today about Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States. This is our Chapter 11 Andrew Jackson Review. We're going to talk about issues like nullification, what it means to be a Jacksonian Democrat. We're going to talk about the bank, and of course we're going to talk about Indian removal and the many complex ideas that make up the presidency of Andrew Jackson, Democrat, 1829 to 1837. Let's first kind of talk about what are some characteristics of the United States during the time period when Jackson takes office. Right? We see a large national economy prospering, the unified national market. We see the growth of cities. We see the growth of the urban workers. We see population growth due to domestic population growth and immigrants coming to America. So we are seeing a rapid growth, and that is easily seen in the popular vote during the presidential elections of the time period. We also see a dependence on the national market rather than just local. You see the nation kind of depending on the different regions to create the unified national market. We also see the occupation of factory owners on the rise, or factory workers, on the rise, as America is leaning more and more towards manufacturing. And again, kind of the lessons that we got from Chapter 10-12 test was that the whole idea that each region of the nation is sort of going to specialize in one certain good or type of product, and there'll be some that unified national market. Obviously with the help of inventions, technology, infrastructure, and the national government. When Jackson takes office, there's a lot of comparisons to our third president, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson, of course, was a believer of limited government, and so was Jackson. So that is, I think, where the comparison starts. That Andrew and Thomas held firm that there should be a national government, but it should be limited. And then Jefferson goes on to talk about the very engine of this nation should come from the educated, from the intellectuals, and Jackson, of course, believed that the common man was capable of accomplishing uncommon things, and so he believed that those were the engines. The common man was the engine of society during the 1830s. Jackson believed that all people should have an opportunity for equality, and that's sort of the equality of opportunity, either way, back and forth, and that's kind of the mindset of Jackson, and that leads to the mythology that Age of Jackson. You saw the rise of the common man, you see the growth of manufacturing, you see the growth of the economy, the voter participation rise. That is all correct. But it's also misleading, as Tindall says, that during that time period, if you're born in one station in life, most likely you're going to stay in that same station. There are exceptions, of course, and obviously the president is one, and that's why the whole era is sort of, given the feel of the era of the common man. Because obviously, before he was president, he was a judge. He was a popular war general. He was that classic rags to riches story. He fought in the Revolutionary War. He fought in the War of 1812. He fought in the Indian Wars, and he had that reckless attitude, violent temper that Jefferson was fearful of. So he was a pretty well-known man, and like I said, he was definitely that first real celebrity president. Some of the aspects of the Jacksonian democracy, as we said, his belief in limited government, his belief in a central government that would be used to check businesses, regulate them, and there were certain times that, of course, his beliefs will either go towards the national government or for states' rights. So he is a complex character. One thing I want to talk about before we get into nullification, we talked about this in class, so let's go over the Peggy Eaton affair once again. Peggy Eaton affair dealt with the Peggy Eaton, who married Senator Eaton. Scandalous, of course. She cheated on her husband with him, and with Eaton, and so Peggy's first husband, Timberlake, commits suicide because she cheated on him with Senator Eaton. Now Peggy marries Eaton, and she now is in the upper crust of Washington society. And we know that the cabinet wives, led by Fluoride Calhoun, made life miserable for Peggy Eaton, and just saw how the Washington gossip just really took a toll on Peggy. Now, what difference does that make? Well, the reason why we discuss this, because this reminds Jackson of the gossip that ruined his wife's life, Rachel, and his own personal political life. He was tired of the gossip that Jackson himself married a married woman prior, and he himself was, labeled the adulterer, and she was labeled a bigamist, and Jackson saw how that gossip and venomous attitude took an effect on his wife and also on him politically. So he knew how detrimental that could be, and he pleaded with Vice President Calhoun to have his wife and the other cabinet wives kind of lay off Peggy, but to no avail. She left Washington a shamed woman. And that right there kind of starts the rift between Jackson and Vice President Calhoun. All right, so we know that Andrew Jackson is a proponent of the national government, and at times he's a proponent of strict interpretation of the Constitution. You read about the Maysville Road Bill, that bill passed by Henry Clay, or proposed by Henry Clay, that would have sent federal funds to help build roads within Kentucky. And Jackson believed that federal funds should not go for local projects. So in that aspect, he's a strict interpretationist. And then we also get the aspect of him as a national government guy when he does promote the national road, because those are federal funds that go for interstate roads. So at the beginning of his presidency, he seems to be a guy that is trying to uphold the Constitution. Now, we all know that that does not always work. Let's talk about the nullification crisis, like we did in class today. 1828 tariff proposed by Calhoun, that of course would help New England manufacturing and hurt Southern agriculture. You're thinking, well, why would Calhoun pass a bill that would help New England? Well, he did it to get John Quincy Adams to lose his re-election, and he wanted to get Jackson to win the election of 1828. Then when Jackson wins the election of 1828, Calhoun will have that tariff removed. But that didn't happen. Jackson does win, becomes the 7th president. Calhoun, of course, cannot get that 1828 tariff of abominations repealed, and so South Carolina passes the South Carolina Exposition in protest, saying that arguing that states can nullify a federal law. And Calhoun's theory, his state compact theory, basically says that the states do have the right to nullify because the Union was created by a compact or an agreement of states. And so that's what he believes, that the states have the ability to nullify a federal law. Daniel Webster, of course, responds to that theory in the Senate and said, excuse me, absolutely not. The Union is forever, and one nation, one state cannot willingly choose which laws to obey or not obey. And if that's the case, if the states do have that power to do that, then the nation, as we know it, can't exist. In his Rope-a-Sand speech, so he gives a speech in favor of the Union, and of course that inspires future Whigs, and what we talked about Abraham Lincoln in class. So Jackson finally speaks on the matter of nullification, looks at Calhoun and said that our nation, if a union, it must be preserved. And so with that sentence, he's uttering national supremacy over states' rights, even though he's sort of elected as a states' rights guy, national government down here, nullification, national government over the states. Then he basically says, I want Calhoun hanged, which of course does not happen, that's illegal, and he has the Senate pass the force bill, and he was going to possess South Carolina with the military and take it over until they agreed to collect the tariff. And Henry Clay's Compromise of 1833, Jackson agreed not to invade South Carolina, and the South Carolina agreed to collect the tariff, and the tariff would gradually be reduced by 1845, the tariff would be done. So Civil War averted then. So that was a compromise by Henry Clay, the great compromiser. So on that behalf, he was acting Jackson was acting on behalf of the national government. The